We made it through the election, right? You're still alive. Good sign. Did you vote? Did it turn out the way you wanted?
Yeah.
Oh, some of you got your way. Maybe some of you not so much. That happens too, right? Well, I gave you some instruction last week. Remember that no matter how it turns out, before, during, and after, it's our opportunity to be kind, to love kindness. And the reason that we can do that in those difficult times is because we know who and what our source is, that our source is God, divine substance, divine life, divine wisdom, that we do not depend on any human beings, any government systems to provide for us. So no matter how an election turns out, we still have a source for our good, and nothing can stand between us, which means we can afford to be kind all the time. Isn't that good news? Yes. And we're listening to the prophet Micah for these 3 weeks in this series because that prophet was speaking for God hundreds of years before Jesus was even born. Up here on the screen, it says, "What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." So we're going to zoom in on justice today. And I'm going to ask Liz to walk around and get your opinion of what justice means to you. Who wants to tell us what justice means to you? Raise your hand. Liz will come and talk to you. Come on, be brave. What does justice mean when it says to do justice? Oh, do we have somebody? Yay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I think it kind of means truth that's what I think of it as, like at its most basic, it's about truth.
It's about truth. Thank you. Who else has Kevin has a definition for justice?
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, it's so hard because an objective standard, everybody has their opinion of justice, and that's 10 different answers for 10 different people. So that makes it hard.
Yes, you pointed out an important issue that we're going to talk about today. Who else wants to define justice? Ooh, we got a hot pocket over here.
I got inspired. It means being fearlessly honest.
Fearlessly honest. Thank you. Justice, do justice. Mia.
I often hear the term used, or I most often hear the term used after a court case.
After what?
After a court case.
Okay, court case.
When people are happy with the outcome, and they will say justice has been served.
Justice has been served. Yeah, very common. We hear it in the courtroom a lot. Jeff has got one over here.
I think for me, it means you hear give it justice, which means give it, it's just do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. And Beth's got one.
To me, it's like an unbiased truth, or I lost the word now, but the unbiased opinion and the right.
Yeah,
by
we're
both
back to
parties.
truth again. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Is that you, Julie? Hi.
The desire for doing good.
The desire for doing good. Thank you, Kathy.
I have to issue the caveat that I know from the unity perspective, in truth, we can never be harmed. Our spirits can never be harmed, but I think of justice as, at least on the physical level, protecting people from harm.
Thank you. One last one. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, Deborah, you got one? Okay. Sure, she says. Why not?
I'm going to throw in the negative side. This really made me think, and then I saw the lady who has the scales, and they're weighing the justice, and so it kind of sounded like tit for tat, or you got to pay for your whatever. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, I don't even like
that eye
anymore.
for an eye thing.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah.
Is eye for, and I didn't like that. So I'm like, now I don't know what to think about justice. I like what everybody said, and I agree.
I feel you.
But yeah, it's a little tough.
Okay. One more, Megan. Come on up here. Here she is up in the front row.
I saw the same scales, and I thought, To me, it would mean seeing both sides, weighing both sides, praying, of course, for guidance, but speaking for those who can't. Tirelessly, to keep going in search of the truth and justice.
Of the truth. Thank you. Good job, everybody. And did you notice how many different definitions we just came up with? Welcome to America. Welcome to the human race. So I remember the first time I heard the word justice was when I was learning the Pledge of Allegiance in school. Do you remember that? And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, say it with me, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I didn't know at the time really what that was all about, but it really was an ideal way of living in America. It was an ideal vision, and sometimes that liberty is deprived. Sometimes we don't get to experience our liberty, but hopefully justice is there to make sure that we get our just dues back, right? And there's also, when we talk about law and justice, we tend to use it in the courtroom where a criminal is held accountable for his wrongdoing or her wrongdoing, and justice has been served. But justice is also important in the courts and in our lives when it comes to making sure that we all have equal access to our good. Justice, equal access to our good. And one of the ways that they describe it in the dictionary, they use the word righteousness up here on the screen. Righteousness, equitableness, so there's that equal opportunity, moral rightness. And a good example I think they used was when they were talking about environmental justice, for instance, means that all people, regardless of race or income, have the right to a clean and healthy environment. That's justice. All have equal access to their good. And we make sure that that's available to people. It's meant to provide for everyone. But there are still people in our country and in the world who aren't getting that. Would you agree? Yeah, and so even from the book of Proverbs, which was written thousands of years ago, they were addressing this problem. And on the screen here, it says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of the vulnerable. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy." So between Proverbs and Micah, we still have the need to do justice. We're still being called to do that. Even with that promise of justice and liberty for all, we have watched minority after minority be deprived of that. So for heaven's sakes, it wasn't that long ago in the scheme of human beings that we had laws that said you could have slaves. So to have a slave was just because the law said you could have it. We had to fight a war in order to abolish that law. And today, there are still people who need us watching out for them and making sure that justice is served. I mean, it's everybody from people of color to, hate to say it, but still women in some cases, our LGBTQ friends, the handicapped, those that are even single parents need some help. There's people that are immigrants into the country. There's children that are being bullied. There's people with learning disabilities or emotional needs. These are all people that would fit in that category of needing our support, needing justice in their lives that can't actually get there on their own. And justice is a tricky word, besides the fact that we all have a different meaning for it. Even when we attach it to laws, interpreting those laws can get tricky, right? There are a variety of interpretations of the law. You've seen it. If you haven't seen it on Law and Order, you've probably seen it somewhere where it seems like an unjust verdict has been brought forth by a judge, by a jury. And it's meant, I mean, we are meant to be calling forth justice in those cases, but we can tend to manipulate those situations and find out that someone has not been served justly. There is a gentleman by the name of Darrell Burton who is a minister at a United Methodist Church in the Kansas City area. And it's a mega church. There's like 30,000 people that go there. I used to sneak over there once in a while I was in the Unity seminaries just to see how the big churches operate. And it turns out that this pastor, before he served there, He spent 24 years in jail for murder, unjustly. He was not guilty. But this was a time, I'm sure it had to do with his skin color, but I don't want to make too many assumptions. But the point is, he didn't have the money to hire an attorney, so he was given a public defender who spent 1 hour with him before his trial. That was it. And the one person that was an eyewitness to prove that he was not guilty, they would not allow to testify, who knows why. So long story short, he was convicted of murder, put in jail, and was there for 24 years until someone was able to work this out and prove and get the witness involved so that he could be set free. And now he's serving as one of the pastors at this church. And this is where it gets scary, that even though there are laws to protect us and justice is assured with our Pledge of Allegiance, there are still people who others, juries, judges, assume the worst about, and life does not become just for them. How do we do justice in that case? There's an example of this prison system problem that we have. Have you heard about this? Probably you've heard more often about it since George Floyd was killed. But supposedly, since 2000, the gap between races in prison has narrowed by about 40%. But still, Black adults are imprisoned 5 times more often than whites, even to this day. And they also spend more time in jail, and that imbalance is even growing as we speak. Part of this might be due, as the studies would say, because there's areas in our country of long-term neglect for minority communities. And because of that, social and economic disparity takes place, which can lead to crime in order to balance it out. And we have yet to figure out a way to solve that problem. Justice is needed in these communities in order for them to have equal access to their good. Even the Supreme Court struggles with deciding what is just. Would you agree? That's why we don't have unanimous verdicts every time. And I just was hearing about a case where they're trying to determine whether affirmative action should still be allowed in a couple of universities, kind of high-end universities, where minorities get, I'll use the word preferential treatment, but I'm sure there's a better way to describe that, in order to make sure that they have equal access to this college education. And it's not as clear as we would like it to be when it comes to who gets in and who doesn't. But we have 2 justices serving that would say they are polar opposites from each other. One is Justice Sotomayor and one is Justice Thomas. And Justice Sotomayor was being interviewed on C-SPAN, and she said, well, yes, I have to admit that we disagree pretty much all the time. And she said that Justice Thomas believes every person can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And she believes that some can't get to those bootstraps without help. And a gentleman by the name of Emmanuel Acho, anybody know him? He played in the NFL, don't remember which team. Okay. ACHO. And suddenly, ears prick up. Football? So he's now a commentator for a sports network, but he also started an anti-racism webcast and then wrote a book. And the name of the webcast is Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. So go to YouTube, look it up. There's all kinds of videos of him interviewing other people. And you can hear what the struggles are and the awakening that most white people are having when they have these discussions. So I want you to hear a little clip from one of his earliest videos.
Another question I get from my white friends, they ask me, why do you think white privilege exists? And I say this, if you and I were in a race, and the official at the start line, they held me back for the first 200 meters, and you had a 200 meter then head start, the only way to level out that race is to either stop you from running or put me on a golf cart and catch you up and catch myself up. Well, you see, what we've done in America is we've simply said, okay, Emmanuel, you're now free to run. And we've acted as if it's a fair race, when in all honesty, black people were held back for hundreds of years. And so if in the late 1960s we say, okay, black people, you can go now, that's not a fair race. LBJ, he said it best when he said, you can't shackle and chain someone for hundreds of years, liberate them to freely compete with the rest, and still justly believe that you've been fair. So white privilege it's having a head start due to hundreds and hundreds of years of systematic and systemic racism. It's having a head start intrinsically built into your life. It's not saying your life hasn't been hard, but what it's saying is your skin color hasn't contributed to the difficulty in your life.
That last sentence. Not that your life hasn't been hard, but if you're white, that skin color has not stopped you from achieving what you want to achieve. And it still appears in 2022 that minorities and the poor have more access to deprivation and punishment and less access to rewards and opportunity still in our lives. The words justice and minorities seem to repel, like oil and water, which is sad and confusing and frustrating and calling for someone to do justice. So if the laws are in place that supposedly assure equality, but we don't have justice across the board, or even often, regularly, then what do we do at this point? There are many things that you can do individually, which we'll talk about, but to me, the primary thing that we can focus on today is to become aware of primary influence of why we are still here, why we are still at this place in our evolution. And that is because of what we call the collective consciousness. It's like we're voting. All the humans are voting all the time with their thoughts, their beliefs, their energy, and that creates a majority rule. So we need to become aware of what that is. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder of Unity, would say that this is called race consciousness, speaking for the human race. Modern day collective consciousness, but I want to share a definition from Tom Shepard, who was a Unity minister and writer, who said, zeitgeist is another word for it, a general attitude or mood of an age, a group consciousness which pervades all cultures, and it can uplift people or hammer them down. While the business of Christian communities, am I cutting out, Parker? While the business of Christian communities throughout the ages has been to reprogram the current consciousness to reflect love of God and neighbor, not everybody has understood this must include tolerance and diversity. Not everyone has come to that understanding because we've had hundreds of years of prejudice drilled into our subconscious, creating this unconscious bias that most of us white folks are totally unaware of. And just since the death of George Floyd, that white privilege has become more prevalent, more in our face, so that we can become understanding of the fact that if you're born white, just the fact that you have that skin color has put you ahead of the rest of the collective. And we still, at some level, may believe white is best. So I'm just breathing through this. I'm going to invite you to breathe through this and ask you to look for it in your own self. Are you willing to acknowledge that there might be some change required in your own self? Let me take you through a visualization and see what comes up for you. Will you just close your eyes for a moment? I'd like you to visualize that you are late for a flight somewhere and you're rushing to get to the airport. You get there, you're dashing through security and finally get through that, heading to your gate as quickly as you can and making it down the ramp, one of the last people to get on board. You're just squeaking through before they close the doors, and there to greet you is the pilot, and you head towards your seat, and plane takes off and you land where you need to land and you go find yourself someplace to have dinner that night, and turns out you're at one of the best restaurants you've ever eaten at, one of the best meals that you've ever had. So you see yourself at the table and you notice over to your side there's another couple enjoying a dinner. It looks like they're celebrating their anniversary and having a great time. And then you go to bed, you get up in the morning and you head to this tech conference. It's supposedly the biggest tech conference in the world. And as you're sitting there, the CEO of the hottest tech startup is coming out on stage to give the keynote. Open your eyes. Did you get through that? Did you see all those things? Okay. Was the pilot that met you on the plane black? Was the couple that was having dinner next to you 2 men? Was the CEO that came out on stage a woman? So these are just examples of how our brain works. It basically uses what's familiar when we imagine. So right there, we've got work to do, because until we see minorities just as apt to be in these types of positions as whites, we've got work to do to change our own point of view and to start making assumptions and expectations to be looking for that, to make sure that we're involved in creating opportunities for that. So I know I may be preaching to the choir and you think, we're unity. You know, in our name is inclusion. Our mission statement is inclusive. And we'll talk about that later on today. But I want you to consider, no matter how enlightened we think we are, that we are still enlightened spiritual beings, but having a human experience. We still are in the body. We're still participating in the collective conscious. We're still holding subconscious memories of who should have priority or who should have the stronger rights. And so we, in this room, watching online, we too need regular exams of how we are seeing the world and the people in it. So start by asking yourself, do I have unconscious bias? Maybe even say this, I probably have unconscious bias that needs looking at, that needs revealing. And if you are alive on the planet right now, you have lived enough years to have been affected by this culture of prejudice that's been around for hundreds of years. You can't help but escape it. The question is, if you're not one of those people who are being inflicted by injustice, are you one of those people that are aware of injustice and taking steps to change injustice? Excuse me. So I'm going to ask you to maybe first just go through your life in your mind and see, have there been moments in time where I have not taken a step against injustice, or maybe even perpetrated injustice in my life, where I denied someone a right? And in this moment, can you keep looking for opportunities to not only encourage respect for others, but make sure that from yourself, but make sure that others are receiving respect from all the people that are around you? Notice those who are being insensitive with their behavior and call it out. And would you be willing to spend more time listening to people who are unlike you, just to see what their life is like and what their needs might be, and looking for more ways to be inclusive? Whenever you find yourself in a public setting where you're with a group of people, can you just notice who's standing outside on the fringe that you could pull into your conversation so that everyone is being heard equally? When you're at work, can you just make sure that people are being treated equally? How they're seen, how they're being involved in what's happening at this place? Can you, when you come across someone of minority that has skills or talents that we would all benefit from, take it upon yourself to introduce them to others and what they're able to do. Open yourself up to new relationships with people that don't look like you, that don't live like you. Go to dinner together, go shopping together, and take a look and see if your playing field is level. You know what I mean by that? As you're living your life, do you see yourself playing on a downhill slope while others are having to play uphill? And is this an opportunity for you to share some of your resources so it evens things out? Who is having to struggle uphill that you could help experience justice by giving some of your time or attention to support and change? So there's so many opportunities to remember the truth of who we are as spiritual beings. Everyone on the planet is a spiritual being that has a divine potential, that has those spiritual powers we talk about in unity all the time, that can be revealed, that would take us beyond limitation that is created by unconscious bias. But we have to be aware of it. We have to make effort. And it may require that we help others see it for themselves as well. Minorities have been living for hundreds of years with a consciousness that says, I'm not worthy. Whether they want it to be true or not, they can't help but feel I'm not worthy because of the years and the treatment that has gone before. So what can we do to help them see the truth of who they are without belittling what they have been through? We have 5 basic principles in unity, and Ellen Davenport wrote a book about them. As a matter of fact, we have some for sale. Susan, they're in my office in a box. They're $10. So if you want to grab one before you go, it's good in-depth explanation of what our 5 principles are. And Ellen also put some practical ways of expressing them. So up here on the screen, our first principle is what we say here every week, that God is the only presence and power in the universe. How do we take that principle and apply it to creating justice? Let's say this together for number 1. Do I affirm divine intelligence and love in this situation? If God is the only presence, am I engaging that one presence? Secondly, our second principle is to acknowledge that we are each expressions of the divine, that we are inherently good. So when we're dealing with injustice, let's read number 2. Do I remember my own divinity and that of others involved? Our third principle says that we create our life experience through our thoughts and feelings and beliefs. So the question is, how did I help create this? Let's read this. Do I take responsibility for attracting this situation into my experience? And our fourth principle is about prayer, which means, yes, I know my thoughts create my experience. So how about if I choose thoughts that are aligned with God thoughts? That's what prayer is. So let's say this together. Have I aligned myself with God, the universe, the good, and received guidance before I act? These are all good questions to ask ourselves to make sure that we are doing justice in the world, using the spiritual principles, because that's what our 5th principle is. Now that you know all that, live the truth that you know. And I love our mission statement that we recently recreated because I think it speaks to this issue. Let's say it together. Are we there? There we go. Together. We are a vibrant, inclusive community for personal growing and joyful knowing of our oneness with Spirit and each other. We claim to be inclusive. We claim to find joy in not only growing our own consciousness and awareness of what needs to be changed, but also to know that we are one with all beings, all life. So we have work to do. Do justice. Look for ways where people may not be experiencing equal opportunity and asking, how can I help? Let Spirit show the way. Use your principles to guide you. Let's take some time in the quiet. Breathe deeply through your heart. Think of someone or something that you love or appreciate in your life as you breathe again, feeling that appreciation. Allow that feeling of appreciation to deepen in your heart. Take a moment to feel grateful for the good in your life right now. And allow your heart to open, taking in the people of our country. You may not know them, but what do you know of them? Consider those who you would guess are happy in their lives. That segment of the population who has enough money to pay their bills, has a roof over their head, have loved ones in their lives. Have found work that's meaningful. Got the schooling that they wanted. Wouldn't it be nice if all people in our country were living that life? Think of what you know to be true of God. That for all beings, there is a presence of love in their lives. That is God. That is unconditional. Take a moment to be the consciousness of God and hold them in your heart with love. Consider the people whose needs are met but have forgotten those without. And imagine their minds awakening to love for all beings and a willingness to do justice. behold all beings on the planet loved and loving. Giving and receiving. Helping and healing. Solving and creating. Everyone has a friend. And God's infinite good continues to support all beings as we awaken, become channels for that good. Grateful to know that there is enough good to go around, that I was born to be an expression of that good for others, that I am open and receptive to divine wisdom, pointing the way toward justice and my role in it. Our hearts are open to know and understand and create a level playing field. So that we may truly all know liberty and justice for all. This is the truth of our Creator and our power to create. Am I willing? We allow the divine to guide us in this process. As we play a role working all things together for the highest good.